The wind screamed through the abandoned farm like a wounded animal, tearing at Ethan Carter's jacket, as if trying to warn him away. The skeletal remains of a barn groaned in protest, its rusted nails weeping red streaks down weathered wood. The scent of rain was thick, not fresh, but stale, like the land itself was holding its breath. Ethan shouldn't have been here. This place was a graveyard of forgotten things. Rusted plows with teeth like broken bones, fences swallowed by thorny vines, and the oppressive silence of a story no one wanted to remember. He'd only stopped to fix a flat tire, cursing his luck as the last golden streaks of dusk bled into twilight. Then he heard it. A whimper. Not the wind. Not his imagination. A living, trembling cry for help. Ethan froze, his boots sinking into the mud with a sickening squelch. His flashlight beam sliced through the gloom, exposing tangles of weeds that seemed to coil away from the light. For a heartbeat there was nothing. Then, another whine. Weaker. Dying. His pulse exploded, a drumbeat of dread in his throat. Was that a dog? The sound pulled him forward like a hook in his chest. His breath fogged in the air as he pushed through the overgrowth, thorns snagging his sleeves like skeletal fingers trying to drag him back. The beam of his light danced over the corpse of an old tractor, its engine long ago gutted by scavengers. Then the ground vanished. Ethan lurched back just in time, his heel skidding on loose gravel as his flashlight revealed the gaping maw of a collapsed well. Its stone rim was crumbling, eaten away by time and neglect. And there, 20 feet below, two glowing eyes locked onto his. A German shepherd. The beam of light caught the horror in stark detail. Fur matted into muddy clumps, ribs jutting like a shipwreck's bones beneath its skin. The dog's muzzle was crusted with dirt, its tongue lolling weakly. But worst of all, its paws. Raw, bloodied. It had tried to climb out. The dog let out a broken bark, more air than sound, its tail giving a feeble twitch. Not aggression, terror, hope. Ethan's stomach dropped. How long had it been down there? Days? Weeks? The well reeked of stagnant water and rot. A rusted bucket lay shattered at the bottom, half submerged in black sludge. The dog stood on the remnants of a wooden ledge, its legs shaking. One misstep, and it would plunge into the water below, too weak to swim. "Hey, hey, buddy," Ethan whispered, his voice cracking. He dropped to his knees, gravel biting through his jeans. The dog whimpered again, its ears flattening. Ethan's mind raced. No signal for miles, no rope, no help. But the dog's eyes, golden, intelligent, desperate, held his. It wasn't just an animal in a hole. It was a soul, begging for a chance. Ethan's hand shook as he ripped off his jacket, tying one sleeve around a jagged stone protruding from the well's edge. A pathetic anchor, but all he had. "Hold on," he breathed, not sure if he was talking to the dog or himself. Then, a whimper so soft it shattered him. The dog slumped, its legs giving out. "Number no, no, no." Ethan lunged forward, his torso hanging over the abyss. "Look at me!" he roared. The dog's head jerked up. For one suspended moment, man and beast stared at each other across the darkness. Then thunder cracked overhead, and the first cold raindrops began to fall. Ethan's knees hit the crumbling well edge with a force that sent pebbles skittering into the darkness below. The German shepherd's whimper echoed up the stone throat of the well, a sound that wasn't just noise, but a physical weight pressing against Ethan's ribs. Up close, the damage was worse. The dog's once glossy coat was now a nightmare of mud and burrs, its left ear torn at the tip from some long-ago fight. But it was the eyes that wrecked Ethan, amber gold and shockingly human, blinking up at him with a mix of terror and desperate hope. The faint tail wag was barely a tremor, like the last spark of a dying fire. "Hey, hey, buddy," Ethan murmured. His voice cracked like the parched earth around them. He stretched his arm down instinctively, his fingers brushing empty air. 20 feet might as well have been 20 miles. The dog whimpered again, its front paws shifting on the rotting wooden ledge. The wood groaned. Ethan's breath stopped. The storm wasn't coming. It was here. A gust of wind howled across the abandoned farm, carrying the metallic scent of rain. Ethan's flashlight beam danced wildly as he assessed the well. Moss-slick stones gleaming like oil in the erratic light. No footholds, just sheer, weather-worn walls. The wooden platform beneath the dog, warped and splintering. His truck was half a mile back. His phone, no signal since mile marker 47. The dog's ribs heaved with each labored breath. It had maybe hours left, maybe less. Then, a memory flashed. His grandfather's voice. "Boy, you find yourself in hell with no tools. You start looking at everything as a tool." Ethan moved like a man possessed. He sprinted to the corpse of the barn, his boots kicking up decades of dust. The storm's first fat raindrops began to fall, turning the dirt to slick mud beneath him. Debris became possibilities. A rusted shovel, too short. Rotted feed bags, useless. Then, a coil of ancient rope, half buried under a collapsed beam. Ethan yanked it free with a shower of termites. The fibers were frayed, parts disintegrating in his hands. It was suicide to trust it. The dog's weak bark carried through the rain. Ethan ran back, the rope burning his palms. He scanned the dying trees, settled on an oak, whose roots had cracked through the well's foundation. His hands shook as he tied a modified harness knot, the kind he'd learned during that summer fighting wildfires. Each loop felt like a prayer. Ethan tested his weight against the rope. Fibers popped. Rain fell harder now, turning the well's edge to a slippery death trap. The dog watched him, its eyes tracking every movement with eerie intelligence. "No choice," Ethan growled to the storm. He lowered himself backward over the edge, the world tilting violently. Suddenly, his boot slipped on moss-covered stone. The rope screamed under his weight. The dog yelped as the sudden movement shook its fragile perch. For 3 heartbeats, Ethan swung wildly, his shoulders slamming into the well wall. Pain exploded down his arm. Then, silence. The rope held. Ethan descended inch by agonizing inch, the rope burning through his gloves. The well's air was thick with the stench of decay and wet dog. 5 feet from the ledge, disaster struck. The dog's back legs suddenly slid out from under it, nails scrambling against rotted wood. The platform groaned like a living thing. "No! Stay! Stay!" Ethan bellowed, his voice raw. The German shepherd froze, its body trembling with the effort. Their eyes locked, man and beast suspended between salvation and oblivion. Ethan made his decision. He let go of the rope. For one weightless second, Ethan free fell through darkness. Then, impact. The wooden ledge shattered beneath him in an explosion of splinters. Ethan's arms closed around a solid, furry mass as they plunged toward the black water below. The world went cold and silent. The black water swallowed them whole. Ethan's world became freezing darkness and violent motion. The impact drove the air from his lungs in a burst of silver bubbles. The German shepherd's body, solid, real, alive, slipped through his arms like a ghost. For one terrifying second, Ethan didn't know which way was up. Then his survival instincts kicked in. He kicked hard, following the last glimmer of his flashlight as it spiraled downward. His fingers brushed fur, clamped down. The dog's muscles tensed, not fighting him but pressing closer, its claws digging into his jacket like it understood this might be their last chance. Together they broke the surface. Ethan gasped, the air like knives in his throat. The dog coughed violently, its muzzle barely above water as it paddled weakly. The well's walls loomed around them, slick and impossible. Above, The frayed rope swayed mockingly, just 3 feet out of reach. The German Shepherd pressed its entire weight against Ethan's chest, its heartbeat a frantic drum against his own. Up close, Ethan saw cracked paw pads bleeding into the water. A jagged scar along its ribcage, old but vicious. Eyes that held stories of starvation and storms survived. "I got you," Ethan whispered, his voice raw. He adjusted his grip, the dog's sodden fur leaking mud and blood between his fingers. "I promise," the dog responded by licking his chin once, a gesture so purely trusting it shattered something in Ethan's chest. Then, crack. A sound like a gunshot echoed through the well. The remaining rope fibers peeled apart like overcooked meat. Ethan's gaze snapped upward. The oak tree's roots held, but the rope itself was unraveling in slow motion, threads snapping one by one. One. First strand. The rope jerked violently too. Second strand. Ethan's boots scraped uselessly against mossy stone 3. Third strand. The German Shepherd whined. Sensing disaster, Ethan's mind raced through options. Tread water until help came? No one knew they were here. Try climbing the walls? Sheer as glass and slick with algae. Wait to drown? The water was already sapping their body heat. Then, an idea. Ethan tightened his grip on the dog with one arm. With the other, he yanked his belt free. "Hold still, boy," he gritted out as the dog trembled. He looped the leather around the dog's torso, creating a makeshift harness. The end had a rusty buckle, just enough to secure it. Above, another strand of rope snapped. Ethan didn't hesitate. He hurled the dog upward with every ounce of strength left in his body. The German Shepherd sailed through the air and caught the remaining rope in its teeth. For one heart-stopping moment, the dog dangled by its jaws, hind legs kicking wildly. Then, instinct took over. The shepherd twisted its body, hooking one front leg over the rope, then the other. It was climbing. Ethan watched, chest burning with pride and lack of oxygen, as the dog dragged itself onto solid ground. It immediately spun around, barking frantically down at him, just as the final strand of rope gave way. Ethan kicked off the wall with the last of his strength. His fingertips caught the well's edge. Ethan's muscles screamed in protest. His boots scrambled against nothing as the storm raged above. The German Shepherd paced the rim, barking in sharp, urgent bursts. Then, a miracle. The dog clamped its teeth onto Ethan's jacket collar and pulled with everything it had. Fabric tore. Ethan slipped. Then, a second grip, this time on his wrist. The dog's teeth pressed just shy of breaking skin, its entire body straining backward. Inch by impossible inch, Ethan dragged himself over the edge. They lay side by side in the mud, both shaking too hard to stand. The German Shepherd pressed its entire body along Ethan's side, its nose tucked under his chin. Rain sheeted down, washing away blood and filth. Ethan turned his head and found the dog watching him. No longer terrified, no longer starving, just present. Ethan buried his face in the dog's neck and breathed. The instant the rope snapped, time fractured into jagged fragments. Ethan's stomach lurched as gravity claimed them. His vision blurred at the edges, a tunnel of darkness closing in. Then came the sickening crunch of his boots slamming against stone. Pain exploded up his leg, white-hot and immediate. The impact tore through denim and flesh alike, but he barely registered it. Because the German Shepherd was slipping. The dog's claws scrabbled desperately against his chest, tearing fresh wounds in the fabric of his jacket. Ethan could feel the exact moment when terror became resignation in the animal's body. The subtle shift from frantic struggle to heartbreaking acceptance. Those golden eyes locked onto his, filled with a depth of understanding no animal should possess. "I've got you," Ethan gasped, though his arms screamed in protest. "I swear to God, I've got you." Rain lashed at his face like tiny knives. His fingers burned where they clung to the crumbling ledge. One by one, they began to slip. First the pinky finger, then the ring finger. Blood made the stone slick beneath his remaining grip. The dog whimpered, not in fear, but in apology, as if saying it's okay, you tried. That sound shattered something primal in Ethan. With a roar torn from the depths of his soul, he wrenched his body sideways. His teeth found purchase in the dog's scruff. Bitter taste of mud and blood and wet fur flooding his mouth. The German shepherd went perfectly still, understanding. Then came the miracle. The dog's powerful hind legs found purchase on an almost invisible ridge in the well wall. Suddenly, impossibly, they were pushing together, man and beast united against gravity's cruel pull. Muscles tore, bones groaned. The storm howled its protest, but inch by impossible inch, they rose. When they finally tumbled over the edge, the world returned in a rush of sensation. The drumming rain, the coppery tang of blood, the warm, living weight of the dog collapsing across his chest. For several heartbeats, they simply lay there, two broken creatures tangled in the mud, breathing each other in. Then the German shepherd stirred, lifting its head with visible effort. Ethan braced for it to bolt. Instead, the dog dragged itself forward and began licking his face with frantic urgency. Not just his cheeks, but his eyelids, his forehead, the tears mixing with rain on his skin. Each rasp of its tongue seemed to say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." A sound escaped Ethan's throat, half laugh, half sob. His arms came up of their own accord, wrapping around the shivering animal in a grip that said never again. The storm chose that moment to break, not gradually, but all at once, as if nature itself had been holding its breath. Moonlight spilled through the parting clouds, painting their battered bodies in silver. Ethan took his first real look at the creature he'd saved. Up close, the damage was worse than he'd imagined. Ribs stood out like barrel staves beneath matted fur. Fresh blood oozed from cracked paw pads. But the eyes, those golden eyes blazed with undimmed spirit. When the dog sighed and rested its head on Ethan's chest, something fundamental shifted inside him. This wasn't just some stray he'd rescued. This was... The dog's tail gave a single, definitive thump against the mud. Family. Ethan buried his face in wet fur and breathed. Around them the night held its peace. Somewhere in the distance, a lone coyote called, but its voice held no threat now. Only acknowledgement. The message was clear. These two souls belonged together, and woe betide anything that tried to part them again. The vet's fluorescent lights hummed like angry wasps as Ethan paced the sterile hallway. His boots left muddy footprints on the linoleum, a trail of their harrowing journey from hell to hope. Every nerve in his body still thrummed with residual adrenaline, his fingers twitching with the phantom weight of Lucky's body in his arms. Behind the closed examination room door, a whimper cut through the antiseptic silence. Ethan was moving before he'd made the conscious decision, his shoulder connecting with the doorframe as he stumbled toward the sound. The vet tech raised an eyebrow but didn't stop him. The sight that greeted him stole what little breath he had left. Lucky lay sprawled on the stainless steel table, looking impossibly small beneath the clinical glare. IV lines snaked from his front legs, the shaved patches revealing a roadmap of old scars Ethan hadn't noticed before. But it was the dog's eyes that wrecked him. Those golden saucers tracking Ethan's every movement with desperate intensity. "Hey, soldier," Ethan murmured, his voice cracking. He reached out, not caring when the vet frowned at his filthy hands. Lucky's tail thumped weakly against the table. Then, with a strength that defied his condition, the dog dragged himself forward until his nose pressed against Ethan's palm. A shudder ran through his entire body. Not from pain, but from the sheer force of his wagging tail. The vet cleared her throat. "As I was saying, malnourished, dehydrated, paws shredded to hell." She adjusted her glasses, studying the X-rays clipped to the light box. Also 2 cracked ribs, probably from previous abuse, and what looks like... Ethan stopped listening. His fingers had found the jagged scar along Lucky's rib cage, too straight to be accidental. His vision tunneled, the taste of copper flooding his mouth. Someone had taken a blade to this magnificent creature. Lucky whined softly and licked his wrist. "It's okay. I'm here now." The vet was still talking. "Miraculously, no internal bleeding. With proper care, he'll make a full recovery." She hesitated. "Though given his condition, if you'd prefer we contact a rescue organization." Ethan didn't let her finish. "He's mine." The words left no room for argument. They vibrated with a possessiveness that startled even him. Because this wasn't pity talking. This was something bone deep, something written in the scars they both carried. The drive home should have been awkward. Ethan's truck cab smelled like wet dog and blood, the passenger seat piled with medications and special food. But when Lucky, still groggy from painkillers, dragged himself across the console to collapse in Ethan's lap, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The dog's head weighed a ton against his thigh. Every few miles, Lucky would sigh deeply, his warm breath ghosting across Ethan's knuckles on the gear shift. By the time they pulled into the gravel driveway, Ethan's jeans were soaked through with drool, and he couldn't have cared less. His empty apartment greeted them with its usual silence. Ethan watched Lucky take it in. The bare walls, the mattress on the floor, the single plate in the drying rack. A life pared down to its essentials. A life with no room for attachments. Until now. Lucky didn't hesitate. He limped straight to the mattress and collapsed with a groan, his tail thumping when Ethan joined him. Outside, the first birds of dawn began their chorus. Ethan stretched out beside his dog, and ran gentle fingers over the bandages. Lucky's eyes drifted shut, but his paw remained firmly planted on Ethan's chest, as if to say, "You're not going anywhere." And for the first time in years, Ethan didn't want to. Somewhere between the well and this moment, the scales had tipped. This wasn't just a rescue. This wasn't temporary. The proof was in the way Lucky's breathing synced with his own, in the way the dog had known exactly where home was without being shown. Ethan pressed his face into Lucky's neck and breathed him in. The antiseptic, the dog shampoo, the underlying scent that was simply Lucky. Fate didn't always come with flashing lights and fanfare. Sometimes it arrived in a whimper from the darkness, in shared survival, in quiet moments where 2 broken pieces fit together perfectly. As sunlight spilled across the floor, Ethan made a silent promise to the dog sleeping against his heart. Never again.